track rate's very, very overrated.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Strike Rate, the Cricket Analytics podcast, where we're talking about the Chennai Super Kings and why they win so much. We've talked about Dhoni. We've talked about some of the historical strategy decisions and the stability that that's brought. Dan, we haven't talked about the Chepauk Stadium, and this is a factor. It's not necessarily the factor. Like we said earlier, they played away from here, and entire IPLs have been played without home and away. But when we have seen it, we have seen Chennai make the most of it, haven't we?
100%. They've got over 70% success rate at the Chepauk over the whole of the IPL history. And away from home, or what, just away from the Chepauk full stop, they're barely over 50%, about 53%. So there's about an 18% difference between their record at home in terms of win percentage and their away record, or away from the Chepauk, or a neutral venue, or whatever you want to call it. So they have an incredible record there, obviously. That's, I would imagine, I haven't processed this data, but I would imagine that there's not any teams in the world probably who've got such a big difference between their home win percentage and their away win percentage over a decent sample size. That's clear that they benefit from home games. It's clear that they know what they're doing in terms of setting up their squad to play at home, and they obviously recruit players to kind of exploit their home conditions or to negate the opposition in those home conditions as well.
Yeah, and we talked about them playing away from the Chepauk, and we've seen entire tournaments played in the UAE. That's probably played into their hands somewhat as well. If you've built a team to play at the Chepauk and then you end up playing in Dubai, that's probably better. Well, I'm going to say it is better than if you've built a team to play at the Chinnaswamy Stadium and you end up playing your matches in Dubai. So that probably also, I reckon, factors into some of their success.
Yeah, I think that definitely they would have an advantage compared to like an RCB who play at Chinnaswamy if the games get moved to UAE, unless RCB play a lot of games at Sharjah on a really, if somehow the pitches are really good there because it's a similar kind of boundary size, very small ground. But I think that they are more equipped to probably deal with various conditions as well. But they're certainly very, very, very adept at exploiting their home conditions, which going to tend to be not always the case, but a lot of the time they're very sort of slow wickets, spin friendly, the pace off as well. And when they're not, it seems like they know that it's not going to be like that in advance as well. It's they're very, very smart at the way that they operate at home.
If we talk about a theoretical question that doesn't involve Chennai, because I think this is some of what we've talked about on the podcast so far, other teams can't really apply. You can't get Dhoni. Dhoni plays for Chennai. You can't go back in time and recognize that you should be recruiting Indian players. Like that moment has probably gone to some extent. That market should be hotter now. Less easy to get that advantage. It should be possible though for teams to build a side for their home conditions. Can you really briefly give us an insight into how teams should be doing that and why maybe they're not?
Okay, so I think some teams, for example, so we've seen with PBKs, we've seen probably with Rajasthan a little bit as well, and one or two others, is that they don't really have like a super consistent home venue. So it's really difficult to build a squad when you're playing matches in different venues as a home venue. Like, so if you know you're going to play 7 home matches minimum in a season every year, then you've got a decent sample size in terms of data set to work out what works at your home venue. So, some venues you might say, okay, well, we need high pace and bowlers who can extract bounce from a pitch because that's what works at that venue. And other venues you might say, okay, well, yes, it's a really slow pitch. It's too paced. We're going to have a lot of spin options, and then we're going to have someone like a Daryl Mitchell who bowls pace off, and we can sneak some overs out of him as well, or something like that. and that's what CSK have done. So every ground is different. Every ground has different dimensions, pretty much. Every ground has different soils and sort of speed and variable bounce heights and stuff like that. But if you've got good analysis team, you can assess those home conditions and say, okay, well, I'm pretty sure that XYZ works at this venue, and therefore those type of players, and you don't have to identify one player individually, just maybe 1 out of 10 or something like that, or 2 out of 10. They fit what we need, and we have to pick up a couple of those guys.
Yeah, and that makes sense. That goes back to the strategy point. So there's Chennai and their home ground. In the interest of time, we're gonna move on to maybe a slightly more controversial point now, and that's the possibility that Chennai Super Kings have just been lucky. Now, to preface this, and what I'd say first up, I think my view on this is they almost certainly have been a bit lucky to be as successful as they have been. I don't think that it would be possible to have the qualification record that they have purely based on skill. Now, you might disagree on that, Dan, and we'll get into that, but I'm going to put my case out there. My thesis on this comes down to kind of this: if you look at the IPL and the distribution of wins and losses for each team, so basically look at the table at the end of the year, and then you compared that to a theoretical league where you were just tossing a coin to see what the outcome of the match would be, you end up with a distribution curve that looks very similar to what the IPL final table usually looks like, in that
Yes.
teams bunch. And what I mean by bunching is that the teams are quite close to having a 50-50 record. Now, if you compare that to a theoretical league where the best team always wins all of their games and the worst team loses all of their games, and every team in the ranking in between that beats everyone worse than them and loses to everyone better than them. So it's like just pure skill here. Maybe like a chess tournament with like me, a 3-year-old that's never played chess, and Magnus Carlsen. Like it's that kind of league structure. Yeah. What you would find is that the distribution curve would look kind of flat, and that isn't what the IPL looks like. It's much more similar to the coin tossing league. Now, you can take that a little step further, and you can basically meld those two ideas. So you can meld the idea that a number of games are going to be decided basically by luck. It's 50-50, nobody knows. And a number of games will be won by the team that's better. And you can model all of these different types of leagues. So you can say, is it 20% luck? Is it 30% luck? Is it 40% luck? And the best model or the best fit is around the 75 to 85% luck. So in other words, 75 to 85% of games are decided more or less at random. And then there's a small number, let's say 2 in 10, 1 in 5 matches that are decided based on who is actually the best at cricket. Now, again, zoom that all out and apply that to CSK. It is possible that Chennai Super Kings have just benefited from a lot of luck over the seasons that they've played. If you model those seasons using like a Monte Carlo simulation idea over and over and over again, it's far more than the 0% chance that a team would have been as successful as Chennai Super Kings. So that's my thesis, Dan. I'm more than happy for you to shoot it down.
I can't shoot it down. I definitely think that there's a potential luck element involved in some of this, and the fact that they've won 75% of playoff matches and overall 65% of knockout matches. I mean that's insane win percentage in a level budget league against good teams who have also qualified, who you think broadly would be about 50-50 in terms of the expected results in the knockout match against another qualifying team in the IPL. So win 65% over a 26-game sample is very high. There's probably been, I have to go back and have a look, but there's probably been a few which were decided on some pretty tight margins, and it probably wouldn't be that to say 3 or 4 results going the other way, for example. So I can't dispute the fact that there might be a luck element involved, but there are a couple of factors that I think are against that argument as well. The first factor is that there's only one team in the IPL who they've got a negative win-loss record against, and that's Mumbai. So every other team, they have not lost more than they've won. And if we're looking at the regular teams over the years, they have got well over 60% win percentage against RCB, KKR, DC, and SRH. In fact, their record against SRH is a joke. Like, it's so good. And they've never lost against SRH at Chepauk. And because they've also got this incredible home record, and again, only MI have beaten them at Chepauk more than CSK have beaten MI. Every other team has lost more games at Chepauk to CSK than the other way around. Those are big factors. And when you've got such a positive head-to-head record against so many consistent teams in terms of consistently in the IPL on a level budget league, I think that and then you've got the home factor as well. I think that's just difficult to dispute to a degree. I'm not saying there's no lucky roll. I think there probably is some, but I'm not sure it's completely random.
Yeah, I mean, like, just for clarity, I think there's skill involved here too. I'm saying to have such an extraordinary record, there's a good example here from the last ball of the last IPL when Mohit sort of bowled a leg side half volley to Jadeja just after he'd bowled sort of a wonder over, and had he bowled that ball anywhere else, there was a good chance that Gujarat Titans won that match. And even earlier in that match when it was rain shortened, and a lot of people felt that the Duckworth-Lewis Stern method made it easier for Chennai Super Kings to win, chasing 170 in 15 overs versus 220 in 20. So a few moments like that do help. You then have to go and win the game, and that's where the skill element comes in. And like I was saying with Dhoni earlier on, I think it's undoubtable that there are things happening at Chennai that aren't happening at other franchises, and that stacks the deck in their favour. But you still got to pull the aces, right? And they've had a little touch of fortune here and there to do that. Dan, I think
they've also had games that they've lost which are tight as well in knockout matches as well. Go back to 2019 where Malinga closed out a very, very unlikely win. Win for Mumbai against CSK by 1 run when he was defending like 3 off the last 3 balls, and took wickets to Watson and the Lord Shardle to Kurt, and Watson was set on 80 not out by that point as well. So there are circumstances where actually they lost close games in knockout matches as well.
Yeah, which is a fair point. Dan, I think we'll wrap up there on this. We're going to take a really quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll try and get through sort of 4 or 5 questions, and we can pick up some others maybe at a later date.